You know Bridges Academy very well now, and I guess folks can hear me now. Like Tom, I'm the parent of a twice exceptional child, and probably like Tom, I was a twice exceptional child, and I couldn't find another school for my child that really inspired him to not be a total mess every day in school with his ADD and his anxiety. And I'm sorry about the microphone issue. So I started the Lang School, and like I'm guessing many of the folks in the audience with a variety of ability differences and their parents, that journey of finding the right space in which to grow and to flourish is really the whole gift of having a child or being a child who is exceptional in ways that people haven't recognized before. So the Lang School is full of kids who are happy to go to school, who once hated school. We have many, many children who were what are called school refusers, people who used to stay at home, young people anywhere from age 6 to 16, who literally would get up in the morning and say to their parents, I'm not going to school again today. And that could go on for months. And just like the kids you saw on the screen at Bridges Academy, it's all about finding that kid's strength. So the first thing that I ask a parent when they call on the phone and ask if I think the Lang School is the right place for their child is to figure out if their child has something that they're on fire about. What is that thing that they love to do? And it could be anything. It could be that they memorized the periodic table when they were 4. It could be that they started reading before they started talking, which is what my kid did. It could be they were diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder when they were 2, and that they're 6 now, and it turns out they're not on the spectrum at all. They just have a lot of sensory issues, and so during music class they need to wear headphones, and they need to be in an environment that can really accommodate all that and keep that fire in their belly going. And this is hard because I haven't planned what to say. How long am I going to go on? You know,
you're doing an excellent job.
Am I doing an excellent job?
I think first of all, the relation to the film and specifically to the concept of 2E is something that can relate to beyond the film, and
Absolutely.
Everyone here can possibly relate to. And how different did you find this school to the Lang School and the specifics?
The difference primarily is that these kids are older. So we started really at the center because of the age my children were. So I had a 1st grader and a 4th grader. So we started with 1st through 4th, and then we grew to the outer ends. And these kids are older, and the big difference is that chaos you see in the classroom with a kindergartner whose pre-K teacher said they couldn't sit still at circle time, that we see in kindergarten, these kids don't have it. That, like, they have motoric restlessness, right? They have what's left, the jiggling, leg underneath the table that is charming but not necessarily so distracting for their peers. So we have, I would say, a more difficult journey from K through 4 than Bridges knows about. But in the end, our kids are precisely the same. They're brilliant, they're quirky, they're funny, they're self-conscious, they're unself-conscious at the same time. They're highly musical. They were the kid that I was, and I started the school basically because I never put this on my website, and I'll confess it publicly for the first time. I used to have panic attacks in the hallway in high school, and I would skip class all the time. I got A's anyway because my teachers loved me because I was a good kid, never bothered anybody, but I was anxious, and I remember walking down the hallway in 10th grade one day and having a panic attack and just like this kid, thinking I would die because I couldn't breathe because I was hyperventilating. That was my particular obsession, undiagnosed. And I remember telling myself that I needed to start a school for kids like me. And I totally forgot about that moment for the next, so it was 16 years until I had my son and realized he didn't fit in anywhere, and worked really hard to make him fit into all the little boxes that the various school choices are there come out to be for our children, whatever their ability differences might be, and gave up because basically I was his school. I was teaching him everything that he ever learned, and he was learning it far beyond what I had to offer him. So that's what started the Lang School. I'm guessing if Tom were here, well, why don't I play Tom?
You
okay,
should,
I had a
because
few questions
I
prepared
do
for him.
fear, and I do fear
It
that
looks
you
like
are
he's not gonna
going
be here.
to be
Okay.
the conversation here.
So my
And,
first question for
I just
him...
feel bad for Tom.
It's okay. My first question for him was, why did you decide to tell the story of your child and his peers in this particular way? Because I'm guessing as a filmmaker, Tom, you play things out visually in your mind. And I'm guessing his answer would have been something like, I wanted to share with people what the real experience is of these children in school, and how not only how other people saw them, but how they saw themselves and their whole growth process. And I would guess that the parents of any child, the parent of any child with an ability difference would want the world to understand the same thing. So that's question and answer.
And in a way of almost adding to Tom, who's not here, and definitely not answering for him, but trying to look a little bit into his world. I know that Tom and his wife are both exceptionally bright people, accomplished screenwriters in the film industry. Many films that many of you might have seen here, including like Mrs. Doubtfire and other films that have had a real impact on American society. And I'm sure they also, as screenwriters, often think outside the box and look for creative solutions in their world.
Right. And I think I was going to ask him about, given the nature of his vision as a filmmaker, since there is that humorous, joyful edge to his films, what that contributed to the sort of the happy ending nature of Twice Exceptionality, the film, and what was the happy ending for his child? Because I know, having met him before and having interviewed him before, because we did the world premiere of this film at the Lang School about a year ago, his son's doing really well. You know, he's found his happy place, and he's at the beginning of his life journey because he's figured out what he's really good at. He knows he's very self-aware about what he's not very good at, and he's finding his place in the work world and growing his personal life and doing what we would all as parents want our children to do, which is working and being happy successfully. So, not sure if it's appropriate to ask for questions.
I actually would love to take, first of all,
Sure.
questions here are never questions. They're always comments in the form of a question.
Yes.
So let's take some. We have one here and then one there. Mike.
Do you find more girls in your school? I mean, I was struck by the comment about
the
how
disparity.
few women there were.
Yeah.
So you're getting them younger. Are you able to kind of identify a population that's more what you
I
would
wish
expect,
I could
or
say
what are
yes.
your thoughts on that?
I wish I could say yes. You know, the two things I want to say in answer to that I have a feeling Tom would respond in a similar way, is that Susan Baum, who's on the advisory board at Bridges, is kind of the grandmother of the field of Twice Exceptionality, and she spoke to how girls kind of keep it under wraps longer. We don't expect them to misbehave, right? And when they misbehave, they tend to internalize more instead of externalize more. And I wish that weren't so, but that is just the way we are in the world. Who knows if that's nature or nurture or both. So unfortunately, in our school, I think of the 50 or so kids we have, I think 10% are girls. And I wish we had more, but just like you saw here, the young woman with the wild curly hair who went to Cal Arts, those are our girls. You know, they're super geeky and self-confident and can totally hold their own in a room full of rambunctious, misbehaving boys. And they tend to gravitate towards boys anyway, and we tend to have boys who are completely unathletic and gravitate towards girls. So somehow it kind of works out in the end.
I've been told that Tom, by the way, is moments away.
Sir.
Hi there. So
Hi.
my wife and I are very familiar with the Bridges Academy and very pleased with it. We have a grandson who's
beautiful.
Benefited remarkably there. How do people find your school? Does it come through the Board of Education, personal referrals, through psychologists and others? How do they find you?
How do they find us? Well, I think, first of all, we have a Well, we're a pretty unique little place in the New York City spectrum of school opportunities. I think most of the referrals in the beginning came from parents just looking online and finding our website in the middle of the night. Those kids tended not to be the best fit, though, those self-selected parents. And so we're now in our 6th year, and most of our referrals come from education attorneys or neuropsychologists or teachers who know about us in GAT programs. And those kids tend to be a good fit. Because every school is not a good fit for every child, as I'm sure you saw with your kiddo, right? And even Bridges is not the right school for every child. Yes?
So what's going to happen when your son is ready for high school? I'm sorry. What's going to happen when your son is ready for high school?
Well, he's in high school. He's the Lang School, right? So we're K through 12.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
You added a high
We
school.
have grown another. So he's a 10th grader now. He is one of our eldest students. He just created last year, we have something called Roundtable where we try to recreate a graduate school environment for kids, and they spend half of their day for half of the year exploring an area of passion, and he created an alternative 3D rendering system that they then had to create a business model around. We're a private school, and we work hard to help our high school students create a portfolio that'll help them get into schools or be able to recognize and capitalize on their talents and skills.
We have a question up here.
Yeah.
Something that struck me about Bridges, and I am assuming it's similar at Lang, is that they work to the strengths.
Oh, yeah.
And as a parent in New York City public schools, you know, as far as I've been able to tell, that there's no 2E programs.
No.
There's nothing for 2E. And so really what we've been able to find is really from the special ed end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you really need to do is you have to work to the disability and remind them over and over about the strengths.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have any suggestions about that and how to advocate in terms of 2E children and how to...
So how to advocate in the context of a special education school and,
how to
and
advocate
staying there?
for 2E, well, not a special education
Okay.
school, but how to advocate for 2E kids in the New York City public school system.
Well, there is a listserv that perhaps you need to know about. So if you go to Yahoo and choose groups, I think it's called _exceptional_NYC, something like that. So check it out, full of parents like you who are trying to figure that out. And some parents are succeeding more than others. There are some particularly savvy parents. Hi.
Thank you.
I was pretending to be you for a while, but...
It seemed like you're doing a good job.
But you have,
And it
you
was
have a
very
nicer
close to
beard
me
than I.
having to sing, so you were all spared. Tom Ropelewski, thank you very much for being here. So, thank you for a wonderful film. Another round of applause for the fantastic film because you missed it.
Apparently it's St. Patrick's Day somewhere in the city, so it was a little crazy out there.
So I'm guessing some folks might have questions for you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
And no,
We use
the
them
film
all
is
up.
completely self-explanatory.
Please.
Yes.
Wait.
Oh, hang on.
Hi, I was just recently diagnosed with high-functioning Asperger's, and I've graduated college. I'm now on my way to probably graduate school. I'm thinking Juilliard, I'm thinking Yale, because I'm a playwright.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice?
I think you're doing great.
Can I make a...
Sure.
There's a great program called New Frontiers in Learning that's in southern Manhattan that if you need any kind of support in kind of making that transition, which can be hard, they provide a lot of executive functioning and social emotional supports to some super bright kids who are on the same journey as you.
Yeah, Tom, I have a question up here.
Mm-hmm.
Up here, excuse me.
I have a question here. You made this film about your child, is that correct?
Well, he's not in the movie.
Oh, okay, but I guess children similar to your child.
Well, yeah, my son did go to the school,
Okay.
which was a really good experience for him.
I'm wondering how these students felt about being videoed and I guess sharing so much of their journey and some of the journey of their peers and being open on video. Yeah, was that like a difficult thing for
Weren't
them?
they incredible? They're just so open and articulate and honest and thoughtful. You know, this is only my second documentary. I had made a previous documentary, and some of the people at the school saw the earlier one and said, if you're looking for a new subject for your next documentary, the graduating class of 2011 has some pretty interesting kids, and you should talk with them. And so I met them, and indeed I found that to be the case. You never know. I mean, most teenagers are kind of monosyllabic, but these guys were very articulate. And I think one of the things that might have helped, I think first of all, this population in general tends to be a little more self-aware because they've had to think about themselves. They've had to think about what their challenges and their strengths are. But I think with this particular group, they had just finished writing their college essays. So I think they'd in a lot of cases written about their journey. And so it was on their minds. And I think they were happy to talk about it. But it was kind of extraordinary that they all were like that. Yeah.
When is this film actually going to come out on DVD? And I was also wondering, American Council of the Blind would like to probably show a film like this probably at the library. Mm-hmm. But I will get back to you on more details. If you have a business card, I can talk later.
Oh, sure. Speaking of which, because I always get this question, I do have DVDs available for sale after this. If you're interested, approach me. They also come with a viewer's guide for guided viewing for parents, teachers, therapists that we've put together to help people watch this film. So, but yeah, I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah. So. Again, like emphasis on each individual student at the Bridges School, but what happens when they graduate and they long graduate, and then what happens to the people around him who wouldn't understand their very individualistic self-awareness and are affected by it in turn?
You know, you're asking the question that every parent that sends their kid to school asks when they first get there, which is this a bubble outside of which they will crash and burn? And essentially what Bridges' philosophy is to help these children identify their strengths, their challenges, and how to advocate for themselves. So if you leave high school knowing who you are, what you need, and how to get it, that's about the best you can ask of anyone getting out of high school, because every high school is a bubble, every college is a bubble. What do you do with the tools that you've picked up along the way is how you're going to do well in life. So I think the things that Bridges, I can't say teaches because they don't really have a course in those things, except that they try to develop them with these kids along the way. Those are all really good tools as you go on in life.
Can I add to that a little bit?
Sure.
When parents ask me that at Lang, I tell them that when their kids go off to college, they're going to choose a college full of ability and affinity peers anyway. So really, our kids are starting college early. They're getting to choose to be with kids who are like them. And through that experience, they're developing the kind of self-awareness and self-advocacy and pride that they need, that all of us need to be really successful adults.
Interestingly, Sydney, the artist, she did get into CalArts, and she just, see, these kids will always be high school seniors in my movie and in my editing bay, but in real life they've moved on and they've done amazing things. Sydney just graduated last May with an incredible portfolio of artwork and animation and works as a production assistant on the Muppets TV show. And Daniel's band, Hardy Har, just opened last summer, opened for John Fogerty at the Hollywood Bowl. So a lot of these, and some of the other kids, they just got out of college and they're kind of finding what they want to do, but those guys kind of always knew they had a direction, and so far so good.
We have the last two questions here.
No, the last two I was late. You can keep it. Unless you got to move, or we can move it outside if you
I'll tell you all, there's going to be a reception, and there you're going to get trampled by everyone.
Oh, fine.
I thought the movie was extraordinary, great, with great portraits of the students as told by the people around them and themselves. I was just wondering, and I love the science teacher who raised baby cockroaches in her apartment and wants to clone humans. She was fantastic. I was wondering if there was anything that you had to cut out that was on the editing room floor that you could share, anything super rich.
I use, you use all the good stuff, that you really do. Interestingly enough, I mean, these kids were very raw and honest, and when I showed them the film for the first time, I didn't know whether they might say, could you tone me down, or could I not say that, or that made me look kind of vulnerable. None of them thought that. They all thought they liked the way they were portrayed. Interesting, when I showed it, and a lot of the kids in the background, the kids, I had release forms from the parents. The kids I interviewed all signed release forms, or their parents signed release forms. But the school has a policy, as most private schools do, that when you apply to the school, you sign a waiver saying, your child might be in a movie or promotional materials or photograph. If you're making a brochure, you might see your kid in a classroom, and the parents sign it off. And so I showed it to the parents at the school, and one parent came up to me and said, I love this film. I think it's an important film, but there's a point at which the school therapist talks about the difference between boys and girls, and the boys sort of hop out of their chairs. And I had used a shot of a kid that I found of where he was underneath his desk. He just was bored and climbed under his desk. She said, if my son sees that, he might be upset. So I said, all right. So I just changed the footage. Because there was I could have said, well, I have the right to use it, but I just felt, why have anyone in the film who's upset with anything about this film? They should just be supportive of it. So it was a simple flick of the wrist, and no one would notice that anything was gone. But really nothing, no one, I never felt I had to cut anything out, and I didn't, and you got sort of the best of it. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Valerie Thompson. I just want to start by thanking you so much for this film. It was really exciting. It made me laugh. It made me energized. It brought to life a world that I don't know very much about. I'm the principal of a New York City public school, and it's an early college, so students go to college early. After they finish 10th grade, everybody starts college at our school, and we have all college professors teaching all of our classes. And we're interested in the 2E community, and I'd like to take the next year and a half to put a proposal together for the Department of Education. And so speaking to you and experts and hearing from people in this room about the kinds of things that ought to go in my proposal, how many students per class and what it works to have, how the mixing happens. So what I notice about the Lang School and the Bridges School is they really are a single population. And I wondered what you might say about having a real mix in population. So actually the Lang School is shifting gears this coming school year, and so we're going to have overtime, twice exceptionally gifted children and just your sort of standard variety of gifted kids together. And so our concept is that the exact same things that help twice exceptional children succeed as they're growing up, which are social emotional learning, right? Strong social emotional learning supports, strong executive functioning supports. They're all research-based, a creative, innovative environment in which they have the freedom to pursue their passions and the tools and the mentoring they need to succeed as they pursue those passions. They're exactly the same things. There's no reason for those kids not to be in an integrated setting. So I'm guessing you're at Bard? Yeah, so I'd love to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Also one of the things Bridges has done over the past 3 years is it used to be, when my son was there, it started 5th grade and went through 12th. Now they've gone down to 4th grade. And 4th, 5th, and 6th are a pod called the Phoenix group. And essentially you can stay there as long as you want as you're incubating. You could take high school classes if that's what challenges you. You can take middle school classes if that's what challenges you. But in terms of social emotional development, that tends to be their group. And because there's no grades and there's no stigma of, well, you went from 4th to 5th and I stayed in 4th, they get to sort of stay, and the changes every year, you take different classes, so they don't feel a stigma of either being forced ahead or held behind, just for often physical and social and emotional reasons. That's something that Bridges was experimenting with, and it seems to be very successful.
We have something similar at Lang where the classes are ungraded, so we have names for clusters of three-year classes together, so like a K1-2, a 3-4-5, and there are kids that are always on the cusp and that kind of are in different classes at different times.
The other thing Bridges did, which I thought was brilliant when my son first came there, is they have drama, particularly in middle school, it's all improv. And so the kids who may have social issues, suddenly when you're a turtle and an eagle, they can interact with each other better than if they're who they are. So when they sort of get to play roles and get to play different characters, it broke down the barriers and the anxieties. So it was a very clever way to get kids to interact.
Before we finish, I just want to add how lucky we are. How lucky we are to have these options, how lucky we are to have schools like these schools that we're showing here in our society, and I'm sure not every community has one. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you, Michaela, especially.
I'll be outside if anyone wants to continue.